And perfect, thank you very much. And then we can slightly start this info session, and the first few minutes will be smaller talks, so we allow more participants to join the session and follow this little journey together with us. So today's session is, this afternoon session is about the role of EdTech in education. We followed with interest what the discussion was this morning, that focused a bit more from the point of view of the industry side, from the point of view of the startups and SMEs, providing solutions, educational technology solutions to schools and in other sectors. Now, in this afternoon session, we would like to focus a bit more on the perspective that actors of the education sectors have in terms of the role of educational technology. So we have three guests that very kindly accepted the invitation to be with us today and give their perspective. They all come from educational institutions, so schools, ministries of education, national agencies and foundation. We will spend some time with them, but of course, I would like to stress that this is an opportunity for all of the participants to ask questions and to just ask our speakers and ourselves about what really would interest them, and what could be beneficial for their business, their activity, or their practice. So my name is Tommaso Dalla Vecchia, and I work for European Schoolnet, a network of ministries of education. 34 ministries of education are currently part of our network, and our aim for this really session is to bring the perspective of the ministries of education, the school institutions, to the Impact EdTech project, and to the participants that would like to be part of this program. After just this short introduction, Adina, the project manager, would explain a bit what the project's aim are and how education is relevant to it. Then, of course, we're going to have a short panel discussion between and among the participants that we invited today. And we would then leave space for questions from the audience, and of course we would close up. In terms of questions, of course, feel free to just shoot them throughout the duration of the different little presentation and interaction that would happen during the session, and we will see whether to ask our speakers directly to clarify some doubts that you might have, or to take those questions afterwards. As mentioned, we would like also to hear your perspective, your point of view. So if you don't have a question, but you have a comment or a contribution to make, please also write on the chat on the bottom right of the screen. You'll find how to do that, so that we hear also what's your point of view is. Today with us, we have in the panel discussion, Vanderhoven, who represent the Department of Education and Training in the Flemish Ministry of Education in Belgium. We have Heli Aru-Chabilan, who is the CEO of the Information Technology Foundation for Education in Estonia. And we have Jesís Moreno, León, who is a computer science teacher working currently in the lovely region and community of Andalucía, and who has been collaborating with the Ministries of Education for quite a few years and with us. So these are the profile of the people that would be with us today. So you can already kind of start thinking whether you have doubts that these people could really clarify. And for the very next minutes, I would like to give the floor to Adina, who would introduce to you the main elements of the Impact EdTech project.
Thank you very much, Tommaso, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Adina Nistor. As Tommaso was mentioning, I work at European Schoolnet. I'm the project manager of the Impact EdTech project. and it is my pleasure to give you today a brief introduction of a project which started just over 4 months ago, actually. So, yes, since December last year, European Schoolnet has been coordinating the Impact EdTech project, which is funded by the European Commission's Horizon 2020 program. And for those of you who don't know us yet, European Schoolnet is a network of ministries of education, and our aim is to really bring innovation in teaching and learning to our key stakeholders: ministries of education, schools, teachers, researchers, industry partners. And the Impact EdTech Consortium also relies on the expertise of 2 additional partners. So we have Easy Education, which is a digital business school, which in Impact EdTech brings forward the acceleration methodology and also the communication expertise, particularly related to reaching out to the business community, and Funding Box, which specializes in cascade funding, and in the project, they are managing the open call methodology. So, Impact EdTech, the project will establish a startup incubator accelerator, aiming to help European digital education innovators to bring the digital learning solutions to the market. And the focus is really on 2 strands. So we're targeting 2 types of technologies: core education solutions, strand A, solutions which are particularly fitted for primary, secondary schools and vocational education, and strand B, educational solutions which target more higher education or general learners. So solutions really targeting any age group at any level of education. Now, the project vision really points to the digital transformation of education, and it draws from documents or the recommendations put forward by the European Commission, such as the Digital Education Action Plan, and refers to the need to stimulate, support, and scale up the use of digital and innovative practice, points to the need of making better use of digital technology for teaching and learning. And also from a business perspective, it also looks to address this need of providing support to European educational technology providers, which currently do not take center stage, let's say, in the global market. So in very concrete terms, Impact EdTech looks to stimulate relevant EdTech innovators to obtain or improve their minimum viable products, and offers them equity-free financial support of up to 195,000 euros per startup, and access to a 9-month incubation program, which includes access to cross-disciplinary teams of business and educational mentors, as well as opportunities to validate their products in real educational settings. Now, I mentioned the 2 strands of educational solutions before. Regardless of the strand, all the solutions selected to go through the Impact EdTech program will have to address 3 main challenges of education. So the first challenge is recursive education. So solutions will have to address or target specific vulnerable or underserved groups, and we have a definition here. So these are groups this refers either to special education, special needs students, or socially disadvantaged persons, migrants, minority groups, and so on. And we have the challenge of providing solutions to personalized learning, and we have there a particular focus on new research-based pedagogical solutions which support new research-based pedagogical approaches for in-classroom education and which encourage lifelong learning. Then we have the area of skills development, either the development of skills of children, teachers, or general learners. And we have a few foci, including STEM skills, digital skills, computational thinking, 21st century skills, and so on. And in the context of widespread school closures and general educational disruption, we expanded these challenges to also include solutions aiming at supporting schools and general learners to ensure educational continuity through online education. So it's important to note that while the fourth challenge I mentioned is a response to the current situation we are all facing, the first three challenges have been validated, enhanced, and refined following consultations with the educational community and also with the business sector, led by the three partners in Impact EdTech. Now, I could go into a lot more detail about the project, but I'm afraid I'm running out of time. So if you would like to learn more about the program, please go to our website, www.impactedtech.eu. One very important thing to mention is that we are now in the middle of the first open call for solutions, which has been open since April this year and will close in June. So there's only a few days left for SMEs and startups to submit their applications. So do visit us online to learn more about the Impact EdTech Open Call and the project aims and resources. Another important thing to mention is that we will have our colleagues from Funding Box will organize their first Impact EdTech info session. So this is a session which is particularly targeting SMEs and startups and looks to provide information about the first open call. It will take place online on the 20th of May, so next Wednesday between 1 and 2 Central European Summer Time. So do visit the website and register to this session. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope at least most of you were able to hear me, and I will pass the floor now to Tommaso and our panelists for a very rich discussion about the role of EdTech in education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adina. And now we're gonna go into our conversation. And once again, if you have any questions or any elements that you want to raise, please feel free to also to write in the chat whenever you feel this urge. And also, if you have technical problems, let us know, and we'll try, of course, to tackle them. So we would like to enter into a little discussion about educational technology, of course, and how it is perceived from the education sector. So from really who would work with them, who work with the solutions, with whom would have the, for instance, the role in the Ministry of Education to decide which educational technology solution to select and deploy in their schools. So we will have different point of view, as mentioned, and the first one would be actually from the Ministry of Education, and I would like to give the floor to Ellen Vanderhoven from the Flemish Department of Education and Training in Belgium to give us their vision in a way and their point of view on educational technology in Belgium. So if you, Ellen, want to say a few words to warm up the discussion, it would be much appreciated.
Okay, thank you, Tommaso. Can you hear me?
Yes,
okay,
we can
great.
hear you perfect.
Okay, so I'll first start indeed with introducing myself and the vision of the Ministry of Education in Flanders. In Flanders, we have the idea that educational technology is really important, and it's an important first step towards a digital future. I think, and I'm not the only one in Flanders, of course, I speak for my department, that educational technology is part of the world of children and teenagers, and therefore it is necessary that they also learn about technology in schools. and therefore it is needed to use these technologies in schools as well. Also to learn about digital skills and 21st century skills, we think the use of educational technology is a big help, and for that reason we support and stimulate the use of technology in education in Flanders on several levels. First of all, there's an integration of skills, ICT skills and media literacy skills in the Flemish curriculum. So all schools are obligated to work on these skills. Next to that, we also give financial support for ICT coordination in schools. So there are people who really have the task in schools to coordinate ICT, both technological and pedagogical support. We also try to support with regard to connectivity and telecom. So we really want our schools to have good Wi-Fi connections. We have a big emphasis on training. No, we don't give all students a tablet. That's a question that is asked, but we do give financing for that schools have to choose freely what they are going to do with it. So there are schools who choose to have tablets or computers, but there are also schools who do different things. We also support training in teacher programs, and there will be in the future more financing that goes towards training for teachers, because we see that this is really necessary. Then especially important with regard to the EdTech project, I think these projects are some projects that we have for pupils with learning disabilities. So BedNet, for example, is a way that children can follow lessons when they're sick from home. But also other projects such as iLearn, that is a big project that tries to combine a lot of tools for personalized learning. Smart Education at Schools project, for example, is that it's a program in which schools can participate to get financing to have an innovative idea worked out with regard to smart technology. And we also have different projects that provides digital learning content. For example, Memo is a project in which all the Flemish, the materials from Flemish television and so on are archived so that all teachers can freely access these video materials. And we also support research. So this is like a big list of things that shows that the Flemish Department of Education is really has a vision that EdTech should be supported and is needed in education.
Thank you very much, Helen, for your presentation. Yeah, in fact, if you want, you can answer to this other question from Gregory's about the result.
Yeah, the result is, it's a bit a broad question, of course, because impact is something that you can measure with several things. You have learning results, but there are also, I'm not sure what exactly you are asking for. But we have results of the ICT monitor, so the research that is done about the how many people are in ICT coordination, how many tools they have, and so on. But it's a report of about 50 or 60 pages, so it's a bit much to summarize here, and I'm not sure what the question is about.
In fact, if you want to elaborate a bit on the question, Gregory's, and then we can go back to that afterwards, after the first round of presentations. But already now you have a better idea of the work that Ellen and the department is doing. So now you might want to direct to her also more more questions to be addressed in the future. What's very interesting, of course, already just from this very quick overview is the complexity of integrating effectively ICT and technology, educational technology in schools, and how it takes much more than only the tool to really produce a result. Now we would like then to leave the floor to Heli to introduce a bit also from her side what's the vision and what's the work her organization is doing. Estonia is one of those countries that is often mentioned when it comes to good examples of utilization of educational technology and broadly speaking also the innovation of their education sector. So I'm pleased to have a representative of HITSA here today. And Heli, if you want to also introduce a bit yourself and your organization, would be greatly appreciated. Heli, maybe you're muted because we cannot hear you.
Yeah, hello everybody. It's very nice to be with you. And my name is Heli Aru-Chabilan and I'm representing HITSA, which is an Estonian national agency to support education institutions in integrating technology into learning. And also we are supporting financially preparation of the high-level ICT specialists in universities. EdTech as a subject has been a very important topic here for about last year and a half, I would say. Government has given targeted funding for this field, but just to give you a broader idea what HITSA is doing and how we help educational institutions to actually make sense what is happening in a EdTech field. I would kind of point out three projects, three activities in HITSA where we actually have many topics which are relevant in today's discussion. I mean, first I point out that we have for now 2 years had a technology compass where we open the concept of different emerging technology trends for the education sector, and we help them to find out new opportunities and share good practice what is already used today in relation to the Internet of Things, AI, or some other concepts. And also it is a good way to inform educators about the emerging competencies we should teach to students in order to prepare them for the future. Very much to today's topic is a co-creation program what we've run in HITSA for last 2 years, where we, in a form of pilot program, that we create kind of opportunities for schools and companies to work together in specific EdTech products. We have this half a year, we have 15 educational institutions and 6 companies who do a very targeted work. For example, there are some psychological support projects. There are solutions what help develop storytelling skills among young people, and it's really one way. It is a nice kind of activity for students to get an idea what is the real entrepreneurial kind of setting, to have them more of the startup mindset. But of course, for companies, this is something where they can, this is an opportunity where they can get a direct feedback for the product development. And this is a nice cooperation platform between the schools, Tallinn University and HITSA, and it's coordinated by the Startup Estonia. And perhaps the third activity that I would point out here is the creating of the infrastructure for personalized learning that supports personalization without additional overhead for a teacher. So there is a lot of discussions of interoperability. So we see the educational technology as a very kind of important topic during, of course, these last 2 months when we had COVID-19 crisis. I mean, everybody, of course, could understood that that learning happens, I mean, everywhere, and technology can be a great help. So in a way, COVID-19 has really helped to make technology is kind of a mainstream subject now for all Estonian schools. So I would stop here and
Thank you very much, Heli. So it was very clear and very inspiring, and some questions are popping up, of course, and we will keep some of them for later for the discussion. But maybe it would be interesting to tackle Gregory's question, even if he might be leaving, but who is asking if students are adaptable to new technology and if teachers are adaptable to new technologies and to change. In fact, he mentioned that there is no time to keep training them because technology moves very fast, and which is, I think, connected with that technology compass, which also you mentioned. Maybe is this flexibility, this capacity of HITSA to respond to change that maybe is helping students and teachers to adapt and to exploit?
I definitely think that we have this competence and also the pace to react to the changing needs. Just to give an example, during this COVID crisis, we very quickly were able to launch 80 new training seminars, which were provided online for all the teachers who were interested. And I mean, this spring has been in a very interesting experience in terms of not only everybody's digital skills have improved a lot, also the knowledge and competences in a pedagogical aspect have increased a lot. And I mean, the feedback what we've been receiving from the schools has been enormously positive. Schools and students and teachers are interested in new technology solutions. And of course, I mean, when you have a time of crisis, first, what is important is to keep, to provide the solutions which are working well, so that the people who are already in a bit emotionally unstable situation, that they can have something which is safe and you know what to expect. But when they get used with the new situation, they actually look for something new to try, to pilot, and that's what we've seen here in Estonia.
Very good. Thanks a lot for this further clarification and answer. Now, just to close the first round, I would like to travel to Spain, and I would like to give the floor to Jesús, who is currently a teacher and who also has advised and worked with the ministry for quite some time. So, Jesús, do you want to introduce yourself and the work you've been doing?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, it's great to be with you here today. So thank you for inviting me, Tommaso, and the rest of the team. Well, I'm Jesús Moreno. I'm a computer science teacher in a high school in Seville. And I also collaborate with Rey Juan Carlos University, carrying out research on educational technologies. And together with other educators and researchers, I run a non-profit organization promoting computational thinking skills in schools. Well, in my opinion, when it comes to the use of technology in education, students should be the protagonist of their own learning. They should be at the center of it. And by that, I mean that students should learn about tech by creating tech applications, not only using them. And I think that a great example of this approach are the computer programming languages and platforms such as Scratch or Snap or App Inventor, among many others, that have become really popular in the last years. So here in the slide, you can see some figures and statistics about the Scratch community. You can see that there are more than 55 million users registered already, who are sharing more than 54 million projects, who have posted more than 200 million comments. So it's an open community, and that's part of the success of this platform. Students can share what they create, they can learn from peers, they can collaborate with learners from all over the world. And well, and as we can see in this other slide, it is indeed a worldwide movement. There are scratchers from the 5 continents, and in particular in Europe, we can see that there are hundreds of thousands of users in many countries. So I think this student-centered approach, where they can build what they want with technology, should be the way to go in terms of educational technology.
Thank you very much, Jesus. Very, very clear and to the point. And in fact, I'm glad you said that, because even having worked in educational technology for about a decade now, I could also see a big shift from technology that would enhance and support the capacities of teachers to a technology that really goes into the hands of students and make them become creators of technology. This was and still is a big disruption. Thank you very much. Now I would then switch off the presentation. Do I do that or do? Yeah, perfect. So we can see our speakers and presenters. Now, I think, of course, we have some questions prepared, but since there are already many questions coming in, and I want to make sure we have the time to answer those first, then I would go to Ellen, who was addressed a couple of questions at the beginning, which are very relevant, and they're both, I think, related to impact. So the first one from Rika is there any EdTech success metric from a government perspective? And the second one from Pilar Cristobal, I think it's very much connected. How do you measure impact, and through which mechanism do you finance projects, traditional commissioning or outcome based? So these two questions I'm very interested, and of course then we can hear also the other speakers' opinion if they like.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the questions. They're of course really interesting questions, not that easy to answer also, because impact is something that is difficult to measure. I think, of course, the first thing that everyone looks at, and it's not different in Flanders, are the things that are easy to count. If we want if we want computers in the classroom, if we want schools to use technology, then we count and we see how digital our schools are. It's the same with the amount of teachers that follow courses or trainings with ICT. It's the same with everything that can be counted. But of course, the really important question is the digital skills and the learning goals that are obtained. And I think we measure a lot in the ICT monitor that I was talking about. So we have every 3 years we have research that measures the situation in the schools in Flanders. And so we can follow up. It has been done 3 times. It's going to be done a 4th time. So we have an idea of the evolution of EdTech in Flanders. But with regard to digital skills, in Europe, there is ICLS that measures the digital skills, but Flanders does not participate. So we don't have those results. We do have our own quality measures of digital skills. To see whether there is anything happening there. For the projects, if you talk about how they are financed, the KPIs differ according to the kind of projects, of course. But most of the time we have all different kind of projects. We have projects that are financed based on the in the beginning, like a great idea that is financed because we really believe that it's going to have a big impact. Then there are projects that are started already, but they often have a difficult time in surviving, and then the Flemish government really sees the importance of this kind of project. For example, we have a project with for children that have learning disabilities, and so all in Flanders, all pupils who have these learning disabilities can get free access to software that reads, for example, their learning materials. And this is something that existed and that the Flemish government really thought was really important for inclusive education, and therefore they financed it. And the results are counted as how many pupils use it, and we see that these amounts are increasing, so we know that this is really helpful for those pupils. I'm not sure if that those are the ones that are financed after being there, but there are of course also open calls. For example, the smart education projects I was talking about, it's an open call towards schools to work together with developers. The game funds as well is directed toward game developers to develop educational games, and they can it's an open call. So I'm not sure if the question is answered.
I think so, of course, and I think also that probably the element related to impact it's very relevant in different contexts. So maybe if Heli or Jesús want to comment in a way what they consider key elements to be, or metrics to be considered while measuring or appraising the impact that an EdTech solution or an innovation in school is actually working. And if you would like to say a few words about that.
If I kind of reflect from Estonian perspective, then we have had now the opportunity twice to ask educational institutions to assess their digital maturity for general education schools as well as for vocational education schools, and we have carried out this exercise twice. 2017 was the first time, and last year second time. And you get certain understanding what is going on a school level, because our school system is very autonomous. I mean, actually, educational institutions have the autonomy to decide. I mean, how they integrate technology, and what are their specific purposes in integrating the technology. And what is interesting perhaps to note here is that also schools have the autonomy to decide what kind of learning material, what kind of digital solutions they would prefer to use and employ. So the government, of course, also funds some kind of larger projects or programs based on what we have created digital materials for all the school levels when we are talking about K-12, and also all the topics or subjects areas are covered with the digital materials, and that has been enormously helpful during the crisis period. But in terms of the metrics, I'm afraid we are still in a phase where we are trying to find our way. It is just recently where the Ministry of Education decided to fund a very big and a complex research project about the impact of the use of the digital materials on digital tools. So I'm afraid here I can't be very, very helpful.
No, but it was, and plus it's really the philosophy behind. So what are we looking at, and not necessarily how, which is more complicated. And in fact also EdTech sometimes in the case of Jesús, I guess it really helps, at least with the associated pedagogy, to develop creativity, collaboration, teamwork. So also competencies that are not really too easy to appraise or measure. What's your experience? How do you see what's successful in terms of EdTech in schools, Jesús?
Well, I can talk about a specific project that we developed last year. I was working in the Ministry of Education last year, and we carried out a project that was called the School of Computational Thinking. Well, it involved over 8,000 students from all over Spain. Tech resources were sent to schools, teachers were trained, and then teachers implemented the project with their students while an external group of researchers evaluated the intervention. And for primary education, a test was developed by the universities to measure the development of the mathematical competence. And the results show that the students participating in the project, who were developing the mathematical concept through completed programming activities, they enhanced this competence to a greater extent than students who did it using other common traditional activities and resources for the mathematics classroom. So that's a way to measure the success of the initiative. So we hired some external universities and researchers who were indeed measuring and assessing the learning outcomes of the students who were participating in the project.
Very clear. Thank you very much. Now maybe just to make sure that, again, we address the questions from the audience. There are some reference about vocational education and training. Maybe it's worth to look at the question from Timo that states that according to Eurostat, close to 50% of upper secondary students in EU are attending vocational education and training programs, which in general are much more skills-based than general education. This education training is normally done in a very hands-on approach, which become very hard in the current setting with COVID-19. And how do you see the future development of teaching vocational education and training? And can such technical education and training ultimately become fully digital, or do we need to look for blended solutions? I think, of course, this kind of refers directly to VET, but maybe you can also, when answering, looking at school in general, since kind of new trends in schools goes towards collaborative hands-on activities more and more. Maybe, yeah. Anyone want to start? Ellen? Yeah, please.
Well, I think this is a really interesting question, because I think it's a challenge for a lot of countries and a lot of educational systems. I think with COVID, everyone is facing the same problem. But actually, I before this meeting, I just had a meeting with a professor who stated, given COVID, everyone is saying that educational technology, it's a golden age. It's a big opportunity now, but he stated it's actually you can see it in two ways, because a lot of teachers now need to use these digital tools without the preparation, and especially they cannot use it in a blended way. While all research states that blended solutions are actually most interesting for a lot of educational learning environments, we now have to do everything not blended but only digital, and that is also kind of a problem. So I do think with regard to technical education, we need to go to more blended solutions. But we see that there are digital opportunities there. Indeed, as has been by someone else there are a lot of VR, AR, 360-degree solutions that are offered for this kind of problems. but there's still a lack of materials. So this is really some kind of a gap that can be filled, and that there's a lot of demand for. But I do think that if the gap is filled, one should take in mind the blended solution in the long run.
Very good, thank you. Heli, you answered in the chat also about vet institutions. You gave a bit already a preview. Would you like to add some more comments? I think you're muted, actually. We cannot hear you.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, vet institutions is a bit different target group because they have very specific needs. And in Estonia, of course, since we are a small country, I mean, the scales really come as a limit. So we don't we don't actually run procurements for vocational education schools for the digital solutions, but many of those VR, AR things have been funded over the last few years. But I think the market and the needs are there, and there are probably, yeah, I would say there is the need to have more, but I can't go more specific in these statements, because I mean those negotiations of course have to be going on a school level.
Very good, thank you. And I guess it would be difficult then at this time to I'm saying a question from Justina to point to EdTech initiative that have served vet institutions covering practical training of students during remote learning, right? Or is there a concrete example of that could be shared?
Well, I teach in vocational training, actually. I teach computer science. So in this field, in the computer science field, there are lots and lots of simulators and tools specifically designed to work remotely. But in any case, I agree with the vision from Ellen regarding the blended approach. I think that's the way to go. I think educational technology should focus on the best things from humans and the best things from computers. And well, a funny, interesting example on this regard has happened recently regarding how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected artificial intelligence systems, causing issues and problems for the algorithms that run behind the scenes in inventory management or fraud detection or marketing, among other areas, because machine learning models were trained on normal human behavior, and this behavior in the last weeks has changed dramatically. So these algorithms are no longer working, and therefore human intervention is needed. So I think in education, this is even more true, and teachers are always going to be required, but tech can be a great ally, definitely.
Very good, thank you. So if there are other questions from the audience, please don't hesitate to keep asking in the chat. In the meanwhile, maybe I just would like to link up with what you just said, Jesús, about the limitation of technology alone. Is there something, and I would like to ask to Ellen and Heli, that technology cannot do alone? So what's really the unicity of the teacher's role in the teaching process and the learning process? What cannot be replaced and could never be replaced, possibly?
I think one thing what has become really clear during the COVID crisis is how much we actually yearn for the human connection. And I mean, the trick is just to kind of bring those different elements together. I mean, there are so many, we've heard that so many years already, that teacher needs to become more of a mentor, someone who supports the learning, and the learning, I mean, students need to take the authority for their own learning, and it has to be much more independent. And I mean, we have had wonderful cases, which we just now to find out, and we to share those good practices what have been created during these last 2 months. Because I mean, funnily enough, it has been a humanitarian crisis. It has been emotionally very difficult times. But for our sector, where we've been talking about using the technology in a meaningful way in the learning processes, this crisis has been a very great help, and the opportunities it has created, they are huge, and we should really leverage on that.
Thank you, Heli. So the crisis taught us what human connection can do and what technology at the same time can do. Ellen, yes, please.
Well, I think it's quite funny. I don't know if anyone else has children at home that get digital exercises and the teacher asks them to make them. I do have them here, and one of the girls, she's always just sitting around, and I'm asking her, why are you not making your exercise? And she's like, yeah, I will do it someday or some if I have the time, or it's not that much, or they need the guidance from a teacher, and it's different from a parent, but it's also different from a machine. And I will never forget the expression that one of my research colleagues when I was younger told me: the best app is the teacher. When they only have an app or a machine or technology, children get really uncertain, and they're not sure if they're doing well, and they don't know when to start, they don't know when to stop. And even if a machine is saying these things, it's just not the same. We expect them to go towards self-directed learning because it's important, it's a 21st century skill, but they don't start with all the skills to do that. So they really need some guidance from a teacher. It can be, as Heli already said, the human contact, but it's also some kind of trust that that we just develop for people. When we grow up, we know that the teacher is someone that we can trust, and the teacher can feel and see whenever we need the guidance and the yes, you're doing well, keep going, or nah, you're going in the wrong direction. It's just different when a teacher does it.
Thank you, Ellen, and that's very important. And hopefully, this crisis also made parents and the community in general appreciate the work done by teachers even more. That's very important. Now we go back a bit to the startups world and the SMEs world. There's a question from John to Ellen and Heli, but I think it's relevant for Jesús as well. I will read it to you. For startups, it's usually quite hard to collaborate with institutions due to timings, processes, and different cultures. How do you manage to cooperate with small startups and SMEs to make this work, if you've experienced that? Maybe Heli, do you want to start?
I mean, one thing is to do it on a pilot project basis and in a small scale, and then it's possible. I mean, I refer to one of our projects where we are working together with 6 enterprises and 15 schools. And HITSA has been responsible for facilitating the cooperation between schools and companies. And I would say that our role has been important because we know the schools and we actually can translate the schools' need for the companies, because what we come across to is that these are really 2 different worlds. And it's not so easy to make them understand each other. It takes time, you need to create trust. But if you kind of have a project frame where you basically describe expectations and where you describe what are the roles of different parties, I think it's possible. At least our experience shows that it is possible.
Thank you very much. Somebody wants to add some consideration?
Yeah. I think the fact that you're asking this question is already one big step ahead. I think the awareness that it is difficult to work together is the first step to go towards a better cooperation, because indeed it's so different. The worlds are really different, and I think working together starts from knowing this and respecting each other's knowledge, knowing that the expertise of someone in a school is really a different expertise than what you have as a developer or as anyone with tech knowledge. Or a lot of times I see also that we all went to school, so we have the idea that we know how teaching works because we saw the teacher and we know what they do. But it's just not the same. They also have a teacher training, so they learn something that you don't know yet, as if you didn't have it. And the idea that you respect this and that you are aware of these differences is already a big start. In Flanders, we do have some kind of projects, as the ones I was talking about before, the Smart Education at School project, for example. It's an open call in which the school takes the initiative. So a school has a need and tries to find a startup or a company that can fulfill this need. And that's already another dynamic when you start a project. The school really has a feeling, okay, we have a need and you are going to listen to us and we are going to work together to solve this problem. And then the commercial issues are, for example, not the first one to guide the project.
Thank you. Yeah, as I saw kind of the commonality of objectives somehow, even though the two sectors are very different. Jesús, you had some experience as well, I believe, in this domain.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Heli and Helen on this regard. This collaboration between companies and Ministry of Education and the education sector is fundamental. And I would like to tell a little funny story anecdote. It is real. It was a several million euro project led by a company, and they had a big issue because they did the teacher training phase in June, and then when it came September, they realized that many of the teachers were not, some of them were not even at the same school, most of them were not teaching at the same grade. So they trained teachers in 5th grade, and there's those teachers were training in September, they were teaching in the 6th grade. So the project failed because of this. And if they had taken into account, I mean, any teacher know this, anyone involved in the education sector knows this. So if they had incorporated a teacher in their team, they could have easily avoided this issue. So yeah, collaboration between companies and the education sector is fundamental for getting to success, definitely.
Hopefully, one of the objective and results of the Impact EdTech project would be exactly that, to make the two sectors dialogue really and learn from each other. Now times is ending, but there is an interesting question from Jorge, so maybe we can tackle that as a last question. How is the teacher community adopting these new educational technologies? What are the barriers? Are we talking only of early adopters, or are we getting broader adoptions level? Of course, it is a very broad question that would take long answers. But if you have some comments on the adoption side, that would be appreciated. Any volunteers?
Yeah, I can say something about that. We had some research in Flanders about the use of technology with teachers, and we saw that there are different categories there. So we have the traditional Tanyas and we have the innovative Ignaces, but of course the barriers are really different for these people. While we see for some it's about just finding the on switch of your computer. For others it's about making content, so they're already they have the skills but they don't have the content, for example. So it's really there's a lot of difference there between between teachers, and it's also dependent on the kind of technology we're talking about. When we're talking about AR, it's not the same as the smart board or when we ask them, do you use technology or ICT, they often say yes, because they use a beamer and PowerPoints. So yeah, it's really dependent on that.
Very clear. Yes.
Jesís? Maybe one thing to add. I'm sorry, because I just said that it's also not because you're using technology that you're changing your didactics, and that's also a big difference that we see between teachers. Some use tablets, but they just use the same. They have their book on a tablet, and that's the only difference they have. While others really have different didactics. So also in that point of view, there are a lot of differences.
Right. Yeah, and that's where we see the real disruption in a way.
Yeah.
Jesís, you wanted to add some?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that when it comes to adopting new technologies, I think that if we think, for instance, in terms of privacy, teachers should be, let's say, a bit conservative when using new technologies. And I think that departments, administrators of education should have a leading role in terms of providing guidelines and recommendations for teachers on which tools to use that are respectful for the privacy of the learners, for instance, among other issues.
It's a very, very important point as well that we would need also a separate webinars probably, but definitely good to mention to keep it high in everybody's mind. Heli, would you like to comment about the barriers or about the adoption?
Well, probably it's very simple to say that there are kind of two universal ways go about it. Is the emphasis of the improving the digital skills, making available opportunities for teachers and students to get better. And I wouldn't overestimate also the general awareness raising. That actually schools and parents, especially parents, are aware what are the new opportunities, because parents can be a great supporters for the change, advocates for a change, but they can be a very the ones who make the process very difficult. So it's yeah, I think general awareness raising can't be overestimated.
That's a good point. So I would like to thank you all for joining, for being with us for this interesting conversation. Thank you, Ellen, Heli, and Jesís. It was really a pleasure to discuss with you. I hope that was enriching for the audience as well, and I'm sure it was. We saw how EdTech kind of can respond to a demand, but which is led by a certain need and a certain vision within the school community. So I think we broadened up the picture enough to appreciate all those different elements. For the audience, I would like to announce also that there's going to be other info days. The next one will be on the 4th of June. Of course, more information will be soon available on the website. And I think in this last slide that we might show, you will see all the details and the useful link and the useful links to the social media that please you should follow to get all the information related to the project and other opportunities in the field of education technology sector. So thank you to all the speakers once again, and to Adina and Isdi for hosting. It was really a pleasure, and I'll see you around very soon, I hope. And here you have all the details. And finally, I wish you a wonderful evening ahead, and stay healthy and stay in touch as well. Bye to you all. Thank you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone.